Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Materion, Unifying Quality Management Across a Global Footprint, sponsored by ETQ. I'm Dr. Sharm, Editor-in-Chief for Quality Digest and your host for today's webinar. Many organizations struggle with disjointed and siloed quality systems and inconsistent data across global sites. This disrupts visibility and the ability to make informed decisions. For Materion, a global supplier of specialty materials, including alloys, chemicals, and coatings, these silos resulted in manual data assembly to deliver their monthly reports. Gina, Lowrie, Director of Quality, and Nora, Biersack, Senior IT Manager at Materion, are going to take us through Materion's quality journey and how they took an out-of-the-box approach to managing quality, even in regulated industries. Before we get started, just a reminder that you can send us questions using the Q&A box. If you can mouse towards the bottom of the screen, you'll find the Q&A button in the bar down there at the bottom. Just click that and send us your questions as you think of them, and we will answer them after the presentation. A recording of this webinar will be available one day after the webinar, about this time tomorrow. You will get an email with that information from Quality Digest. Also, if you need a certificate of attendance, this is important, you will need to answer the polling question that is presented during this webinar. Okay, today's presenters are Gina Rugala, Lowrie, Director of Quality at Materion, Nora Biersack, Senior IT Manager at Materion, and Liz Pardo, Marketing Manager at ETQ. And Liz, I believe you are starting us off.
Thanks, Dirk, and thanks for the introduction. I'm so excited about our guests today. We're joined by Gina Lowrie, Director of Quality, and Nora Biersack, Senior IT Manager at Materion. They are very experienced leaders. They're going to be sharing their quality journey and lessons learned. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you, Nora and Gina. We're super excited to have you today. So before we get started, I am just going to give you a brief overview of ETQ. So we are a leading provider of quality management systems. We've been doing this for over 30 years. We empower quality champions like Materion to make quality management kind of a catalyst for business agility and success. So we have a quality management solution. You can see some of the recognition we've actually received for it. If you're familiar with G2, the software review site, we've actually been recognized as an industry leader for 16 consecutive quarters. So our solution, customers like it for a lot of reasons. It's flexible, scalable, cloud native. We have over 40 applications that span the entire life cycle of quality management, and it supports our customers both with their needs and their growth. So like I said earlier, we've been doing this for 30 years. We have cross-industry experience, so you'll get a look at some of our customers on the next slide, but we span a variety of industries, and we have over 1 million global users. And finally, we help our customers with all the support and resources that they need for success. And you'll hear about some of that from Gina and Nora coming up in a second. So here is a look at some of our customers. As you can see, we span a broad range of industries from food and bev, consumer goods, and discrete manufacturing, process manufacturing. You might actually see Materion in there a couple different times. You'll hear that from Gina and Nora, but they actually serve a variety of industries as well. So, you know, quality management processes can kind of cross-pollinate across all kinds of industries, and our customer base really shows that. So I just want to give you a look on how a proven QMS can actually help with some of the challenges with driving efficiency and revenue that organizations often face. So ETQ helps organizations standardize quality processes and documentation throughout the whole organization. So whether that's across geographies or business units, having that same like document control, for example, that can all be standardized and you can roll up that data. We also help maintain compliance with regulations across different industries, anything from med device and life sciences to some regulations that Nora and Gina will talk about in a few minutes. And we also help improve supplier quality, collaborate with suppliers on corrective actions, and actually also help scale for growth. So it makes it easy to deploy quality management solution across your entire organization. And I just want to give you guys a look at why harmonize. So this is a big part of Materion's story, and it really helps with having less complexity, improving efficiency, improving business agility. There's a more consistent approach to training, support, and it increases adoption across larger organizations and even small organizations too. And it gives you that single version of quality data. So you'll have clearer visibility on issues and trends, and that ultimately is going to reduce risk and save time and money. So now I'm going to turn it over to Gina and Nora, and they're going to take us through Materion's quality journey. Gina, Nora.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
So Materion, we've been around for a long time. We have over 100 years, and we are publicly traded on the stock exchange. We're based in Cleveland, Ohio, east suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, and we have 32 worldwide locations, so global company, 3,700 employees and 66 countries. Next. So this gives a nice, just a visual of our different locations. We have 3 separate divisions of performance materials, electronic materials, and precision optics. Again, a global company. Next. So in our performance materials, we're a high performance alloys. We are specialty materials. We do beryllium products is one of our main materials that a lot of people purchase from us, but we also do a mixture of metal matrix composites, clad metals. The picture you might see above the performance materials one is the mirrors on the James Webb telescope. Those are made out of beryllium, and that's one thing we made. And in our electronic materials company, we make specialty materials. A lot of what we do is for the semiconductor industry. It's thin film deposition and microelectronic packaging. Then we also have precision optics, and we make a lot of the optical thin film coatings. Those are our 3 main divisions. And we supply various industries. So energy, aerospace and defense is pretty big. Semiconductors, quite a large portion of our value-added sales. Automotive, telecom, data, medical. So we supply a lot of different markets. So I'm Gina Lowrie. I've been with Materion for 8 years, but I've been in quality for 35, 30, 36, almost 37 years now. And I've been in a number of different industries in many roles. So I've been in global quality, global supplier quality, and also new product development manager for quality. And again, in many different industries. So aerospace and defense, I was in for 17 years, and we also supply that market at Materion, automotive, off-highway and mining, window and glass, and then electronics. I'm currently one of the ETQ ambassadors for our company. We have 5, and I'm the business process lead for the ETQ implementation at Materion. And my background's in chemistry and industrial biochemistry.
Thanks, Gina. So I'm Nora Biersack. I'm located up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been with Materion and the privately held company that's located up in Milwaukee before that for 35 years. Actually am looking forward to retirement in another week. So we'll end it at 35 and a third total. My role at Materion is basically a liaison between our business users and our IT group. So I work on strategy and making sure that IT is doing all the things that are going to help the business to grow, but also that the business is aware and partnering with our IT department so that we're making the best use as we can of our IT resources. Boy, along the course of 35 years, I've been in a lot of different roles at Materion, including marketing and customer service. Always had a foot in IT, and over the last several years, I've led a lot of major projects for Materion. ETQ was certainly one of them, and that's something we're going to talk more about. I've done a few SAP implementations across our sites. We've got an enterprise LIMS system, so I'm well versed in that, as well as a bunch of other business process projects. So the role has really given me an opportunity to understand well the opportunities and challenges that exist within our business and help to marry our IT expertise to help address those issues. Over the last couple of years, my focus has really been in the operations space. So I've been working on an Industry 4.0 journey together with our engineering and infrastructure teams, where we're really trying to go into our sites and put in some much needed shop floor technology solutions to really make efficiency and other improvements at the sites and bring them up into the current century. So lots of exciting opportunities at Materion.
So our journey, one of the biggest issues that we were faced with is that we have over 20 global manufacturing sites, and many of them were all standalone quality management systems. The system that we used was a Lotus Notes-based QMS, and then some of our sites really didn't even have a true QMS. They were Excel spreadsheets. So we didn't have any sort of standardized processes across the board, and each site kind of migrates into their own little business processes with that lack of standardization. And so we couldn't really share any common documents. We might have some similar or the same customers across multiple sites, but each system was standalone, and that was really hard to roll up any sort of data reporting to have results at a corporate level. It's very challenging to do that, and you're putting a lot of different data together, and again using spreadsheets. And then also with Lotus Notes being just a really old platform that we're sunsetting, so we had to remove everything out of there. And we looked at many different QMS systems and narrowed it down to 8. Then we narrowed it down to 3, and then we ended up choosing ETQ. We had a whole spreadsheet with many different ways to score the various offerings from each company, and we chose ETQ. So this is a map of our initial project plan. So as you can see, down the left is all of our various Materion sites that we were going to be implementing ETQ into. And then each of the phases represents different applications that we decided that we were going to use and in a specific order. As a quality director for performance materials, I felt it was really important to have some of the core applications implemented first. So document control, training, and corrective actions were our main three that we chose to go with first. And then the second set of core applications is audits, the risk register, and our change management. We decided with phases to implement phase one first in a mixture of sites. We used corporate, and then we chose many of our US-based sites in one of our divisions, but then we also thought it would be really important to look at a couple of our global sites. So one of our sites in Alzenau, Germany, and one in Limerick, Ireland. So we did this with multiple people within a project team. And we did that in 6 months, the first core applications, and then another 6 months for the additional. And then we had a plan to implement those core applications at various sites as we moved along. You can go to the next please, Liz, so I can. So what we ended up doing though, is we pushed out that phase 5 in the blue. We were going to do that in 2022, but we ended up pushing that out because we felt it was, as we learned more about ETQ and were more familiar with it, we thought it was really important to roll out the core applications at our additional sites. So we implemented phase 3 and 4 last year. And that way we have a lot more of power users across multiple sites and people that are actually now used to using ETQ, and they can help us actually in the implementation of our non-conformance handling application set, which is phase 5. So we have a lot more people that are users and can have input into that phase 5. So we are in the midst of that now. We're starting phase 5 and phase 6, which is in some of our APAC sites and some of our EMEA sites, and then one more US site. So we're pretty busy with the implementations. And as you can see, it goes through 2024. But it was really important to lay this out. And if you make changes to your plan, that's okay, as long as they make sense to your business.
Yeah, so a little bit about the makeup of our project team. Very intentional setup here. We have a project steering committee, and that's made up of our CIO, the quality directors across all 3 of our business units, people at higher levels in the organization, VPs and other project leaders. They've been part of the ETQ journey since the beginning. So even during the phase that Gina described, where we were, looking at different options and coming up with our recommendation for which tool we were going to choose, they were part of that conversation. A lot of requirements in terms of the final request for funding. We had to come up with business justification and all the things that go along with a major funding request. So the steering committee was and continues to be a key part of the overall project strategy. But then along with that, we've developed, as Gina mentioned, we've developed a very strong core team of business application experts. So our ETQ ambassadors and admins have really come up in knowledge quite a bit since the first rollouts, and they are a part, regardless of what site they started at in the first phase, they're all a part of our continuing journey and helping us to roll out in a standardized way at each site. So, without them, we'd be starting over each time. So that's super helpful, but then also making sure that we've got site leaders, the quality leaders at each site on the project teams, taking ownership, making sure that the site is fully engaged in the project. And once we roll out, that we've got full user engagement, helping to, make sure documents are getting completed on time and training and all of that. So between those three key functions, we've had a very successful project rollout roadmap. So that takes us to the out of the box conversation. And, a lot of the comments here really apply to any system that you would roll out. ETQ has a lot of flexibility, but it has been our primary directive, I guess, throughout this project to stick with out of the box as much as possible. We would never have been able to complete the timeline that Gina walked us through in the amount of time that we did. And I would also say under budget for each one of the, for the project so far. If we were implementing customization at each different site. And boy, don't think that people don't ask for that. But again, having that strong core team, having support from the top down to make sure that we're following along with the processes that we set forth at the beginning has been super helpful. It's easier from an IT perspective, it's easier to support the system. Upgrades like the patch that just went in last week have been pretty seamless for us. Enabling cross-site collaboration. We've got, our quality managers at all of our different sites are constantly supporting one another with their own processes, and people that move from one site to another have a common process. They don't have to relearn new business processes at each site. So, we've stuck with out of the box. We will continue. That doesn't mean there aren't a few little tweaks here and there that we haven't customized a screen or, done a few different workflows or what have you. But by and large, we've stuck with out of the box and it has served us well.
One of the processes that we were able to implement within ETQ was our export control compliance. So because we supply to aerospace and defense industry, we're bound by ITAR and EAR requirements and other government regulations. And we were able to implement a process where we have each user is defined as whether or not they're a US person comes down from our HMS system. And that feeds directly into ETQ. And based upon their US person status, it's defined in ETQ as whether or not they're able to see export control documents. So everyone is given the opportunity, regardless of US person status, they would have the security to see non-export control documents, but for export control documents, they can only see that if they have that US person status. And then we also did the same thing for the documents. All documents entered in the system, it's required that it be defined as whether it's export control restricted or not. So that linkage between the two, between the person being allowed to see export control documents and the document itself being defined as such, that helps to control whether or not, or who can see it. And that allows us to meet those government regulations. We also we put like a little blurb, if you can see kind of in that center screen, where it explains it very well that anyone entering a document or creating it, if they're unsure of it, they contact our compliance department to make sure that that's very well controlled. But it's worked pretty well. We can even further refine who can see a specific document. So just because a person has export control status where they're allowed to see export control documents, it doesn't mean they can see every single one. So we can actually control and say who can see each document, and that's set up within the additional document security section for every document. We can control that to be just a couple people or a group of people, but it's worked pretty well. But we were able to implement that fairly seamlessly. So ETQ, it supports our company growth, but in many different ways. So one of the reasons we chose ETQ is because they were a certified SAP partner. And we use SAP, and it really allows for integration into SAP, whether it be master data. One of the processes we're in the midst of working on is implementing non-conformance management. So that will be a little more integration than just some of the master data, because we plan to actually have integration that will go right into SAP's quality systems and inspection planning. There's also the audit management is really nice because we can work with our supplier audits, internal, third-party audits, customer audits, but it's tied into other modules. So when we perform an audit, we can save all of our objective evidence within the audits. We create all of our own checklists. So for AS 9100 or ISO 9001 or ISO 17025, we can create checklists specifically for those audits, and those are directly tied to the audit. And then it's also linked directly into the corrective actions. So when if we have to issue a corrective action, it goes directly into that module. So everything's kind of all in one. It's all located. I can access all the other modules directly from the audit management one. So it's really nice how it's everything's connected. Some of the benefits of ETQ. So we went directly to our users after each of our implementations, different phases. We went directly to our users to see what benefits they felt they were getting from the system. So there was overwhelmingly, folks thought it was just really easy to use, and it has a modern interface. It's a cloud-based system. It's really easy if you need to search for documents. So this is specific to even the document control module. You can search in so many different keywords or search in different types of the site that owns it, perhaps the department that owns it, the title, obviously the document number. But one thing that folks liked is that you can save favorites. So perhaps for maybe an operator who uses just a few documents on a regular basis, they can save it into their favorites folder and access it at any time. Again, we have one system. So instead of all these separate instances of our old QMS system, it's all one system and everybody's in that system. Doesn't mean that everybody can see every document, but we can define who can access the information, who can access the reports, and it's all in one system and we can roll that up. So it really is nice. One thing that's great about it that we really are benefiting from is the workflow. So there's workflow built in throughout. And then you have escalations, due dates for when corrective actions may be due, or perhaps periodic reviews of documents. You can set that up to whatever works for your business. And then you can fast track some of the due dates, especially for training. There's a lot, the training module too, we have a lot of, there's a lot of flexibility in that you can do online training, you can schedule in-person training, you can set up testing for the training. You can create your own training documents, and it's flexible in that regards. And some of the best practices and lessons learned, there were many. I'd say one of the biggest ones that I would see is that when you're implementing, especially for, say, a document control system, really take time to identify all the metadata associated with those documents, like the hierarchy of your locations, or, you know, are you going to build them up based upon maybe the business that they're associated with, or are you going to have a hierarchy rolled up by their geographic location? And then also the building blocks and the keywords. Does it apply to what area, what department does it apply to? Is it an internal or external document? Is it one that needs to have the export control requirements or not? Who owns that document? Who's the business process owner? Who needs to review it and approve it? But having that really cleaned up in your, say, in your old systems before you migrate into ETQ is really key. You want to make sure it's very clean and that all the data that comes along with it is accurate. So that's I'd say number one is really big. The training management module at ETQ, our rollout's been a bit challenging. And that has to do with, in our older system, the way we set up our training management was really more based upon kind of like job descriptions somewhat. It's been a bit challenging though, where we create training groups and we have folks that we assign the training for a specific document based upon the training group that's been identified for that document, and then the people who are in that training group. Now I know ETQ is coming out with I think some sort of enhanced module for their training management. I think that's this summer though, but I'm sure you'll hear more about that later. But that's coming out, I believe, this summer, or possibly in June in their when they have their meeting in Vegas. There's a few other things like sticking to out of box, and Nora mentioned that out of box to me is really, really important. But also when you set up your workflows, we have different escalations. So we have an escalation if somebody's late on a task, or if if they just haven't completed a piece of, maybe they are for corrective action, they're supposed to define the root cause. And if it's not on time, they get an escalation email and notification. And then we'd set it up, and you can set it up however works for your business. But if that's not closed out in so many days, it escalates to their supervisor. And then if that's not closed out, it escalates to their supervisor. So it can be somewhat overwhelming if the system isn't maintained. So it's really important for any system, but it's really important to stay on top of the escalations so that it doesn't become overwhelming. And there's reports that can be run to manage that. You can run it, and you know what's due, what days, what's overdue. And there's also an assignments page. It's a dashboard, and it has your assignments. So if somebody's assigned something, they can look in one location and find what's due, what's overdue, what are they assigned, and make sure they work on that.
So I'll add a little something to that too, Gina. When you first roll out at a site, it's new for everybody. It's new for the people who have to administer. It's new for the people who have to complete the tasks. It's new for the people who are receiving those escalation emails. So, I think we kind of missed an opportunity there with the people who aren't necessarily using ETQ hands-on, but in higher level management, they're getting those escalation messages and not really sure what to do with them. And so, making sure that they have a good amount of content in them, and the people who are getting them know what they're being asked to do and what they're supposed to do with it. We definitely heard that feedback. So, and it quiets down. It's something that spikes when we go live, and then as people get accustomed to using the system, it quiets down some, not entirely, but some. But definitely that's something to consider. I think there's another item on here about the consider having a third instance. We have two. We just have our prod and our dev system, and having a third instance that would just be a sandbox, a place for employees to go who are new to the system to go in and do training, and not encountering things that we might be working on, or things in development, would probably have helped us, and something for us to actually consider. So definitely thinking about that. And then from my perspective, and Gina, I know you've got a couple other ones you want to touch on here, but the other thing that our account rep, Frank, is probably tired of hearing me talk about or ask about is that bullet at the second to the last. While we love ETQ and they're an awesome partner and have always been for us, the fact that their policy is to implement changes in the system during working hours has been something that we've had a lot of email exchanges about. So I hope by bringing it up, I hope they hear it one more time, and maybe that's something that they'll reconsider doing on off hours or weekends.
And one thing that we felt is really important, and we will continue to do this for a long time, is we have structured meetings set up for the ambassadors and the admins to get together, and we talk about, are there any issues anybody's seeing? Does anyone have an improvement idea? Is there any requests, or we have our own support tickets, or internally that maybe somebody wants to see perhaps a different field in a view. One thing that's really nice is each of the modules has multiple views, so you can look at, it's kind of like having a list of whatever it is you're looking for, but it's a list with certain fields in it. And it's really easy to change those views or to modify them and add different fields. But there's some things that sometimes as an ambassador or an admin, we might not know how to approach something or fix something. But ETQ has like a community support. If as an ambassador, we can go in and enter a support request and work with ETQ to either to help us maybe fix a bug, or it depends what it is. Some of it we would use our RC hours to pay for it. Other ones, if it's just a bug or something that can be quickly resolved, we work with the ETQ support team quite a bit for different things like that, or learning more about ETQ. I know there's a lot in there right now that we don't even know. We've been working on it for over 2 years, and I'm sure there's so much more in ETQ that eventually we'll be taking advantage of and learning more about. But at this point, we're still working to get sites onboarded and bring in all those additional modules. And there's also ETQ Academy is really important. ETQ has its own, it's a separate website called ETQ Academy, and it's sectioned into various modules for each of the applications or the modules. And we require everybody that's using it to take some of the, whether it be a micro learning that's just a minute or two long, or maybe something that's a little more in depth that it could be 40 minutes or an hour long, but they already have their own training. Now, Materion is, in addition to that, Materion does create our own training module that's very specific to our documents or our processes. And we use that also for training, but ETQ Academy is really great to work with. And their hosts are Jillian is fantastic. So we enjoy working with ETQ and their support group, as well as ETQ Academy.
I think that's it, right? I believe that was our last slide.
Yep, so now I have a couple of questions for you guys before we take questions from the audience. So I love your effort of collecting feedback from users. So my question is, why was collecting feedback from users important to you? And what did that process look like?
Gina, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So after each of our phase implementations, we went to the source. So the project teams at each site, typically the project lead at each site is the quality manager, but the ambassadors and the quality managers went to their own sites and got feedback. What do you like about it? What's working? What isn't working? Because to me, it's really important to do that. To our team, it's important because it tells us what we can possibly do better the next time. Or it could be something that we might want to stress ahead of time for the next implementation, but it really tells us whether or not we've got good user adoption too.
The other thing we did was we had kind of a town hall of all of our site leaders. That was, gosh, what, about 2 months ago or so, and you know, really wanted to have an opportunity where we could share best practices. You know, have sites give one another some coaching, you know, and that was really helpful to help build that network of users to, you know, if people were struggling at a certain site, other users could say, oh gosh, yeah, we had that same problem and here's how we got through it. And so, you know, it's not, the knowledge is not all contained within a small group of people. We really wanted to make sure that, you know, spread the wealth, everybody knows one another, they know they can reach out to each other and you know, really start to build that strong user-based foundation.
Awesome. So do you have a specific example of like something that you changed as a result of user feedback?
Yeah. Well, so some of the things that we changed were like one in particular is the periodic reviews for document control. So say a document is due for review, I'll just say in a year. 30 days prior to that review, an email goes out to the business process owner, which is the document owner, that says, hey, this is due for review in 30 days. And then when that gives them time to review it, decide if it needs to be changed or to just go ahead and say they reviewed it. And all of that is documented and saved within the system that it was reviewed. But one of the things that we were noticing is that periodic review doesn't show up. It doesn't appear in their dashboard as an assignment. So we worked with ETQ support team to change that because it's different than like a workflow assignment. It's really just saying, hey, this is due for review, and then you just do it. But it wasn't showing up in their assignments and people were missing them. So we worked with them and we added that. So now that when somebody has a periodic review that's due, it actually shows up as an assignment in their dashboard, and it made it easier. That's one example.
Awesome. So let's talk about senior management buy-in. So you selected ETQ. What kind of information did senior management ask for or need to see before making any decisions?
A lot.
Yeah.
We had a lot of like cost information. You know, we had to do, you know, RFI, RFQs. We had to really understand like the path that we wanted to take. So that map that we showed you previously that had the whole project laid out over 4 years, we had to really decide how long is it going to take for all of these sites to implement all of these modules. So really understanding that, and then understanding how many users you would have at each site, because then that tells you how many licenses you would need year by year or module by module as you implemented. And then not just how many licenses, but what type. So there's different types. There's like a full license, and then there's reader only licenses. So if it's going to be people that are only going to be reading information, they'd have one type. And if it's going to be anybody that's going to create a document or create a corrective action or an audit or modify it, they would have a different type of access. So laying all that out, understanding the cost, you know, again, the site rollout, that was an important part of it. And then
yeah, I would add, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you know, there was certainly a strong requirement for us to present a business case. You know, with administrative projects, it's always a challenge to come up with an ROI to say you're going to save this much money, you know, by implementing the system, but certainly looking at the business processes that were either going to be improved or eliminated entirely. You know, that was something that we spent a lot of time on, tried to put some dollars to it, but they were soft. And everyone understood that going in, but having that understanding of what the business process impact is with this new tool, what are we going to gain, where are the efficiencies, that sort of thing was very important.
Awesome. So we are getting a lot of questions from the audience. I want to make sure we have time for that. But first, we do have a poll question that we want to run by you guys. I know this is a lot of words, so I'm going to hold it up on the screen for a while, and Dirk is going to throw that up for a while too. So we want to know which of these problems resonate most with you, since organizations seek out a QMS to solve these problems. Which one sticks out to all of you in the audience out of these 5 choices? While we're having that poll open, I will start taking some questions from the audience. So a lot of questions here, which is awesome. Thank you so much for that. Art wants to know, is the steering committee that was initially put in place still in place today? You know, do you use them for implementing new modules or kind of roadmap review, anything like that?
Yeah, they are. We do periodic project reviews, you know, any reporting out any issues that we're encountering, you know, so that holds us to the project timeline, but also, you know, they're there to help remove roadblocks. So yes to that. We definitely continue to use that team.
That's great. I have one on interacting with SAP. I know you guys integrate with SAP. How well or what kind of steps did you guys take to integrate SAP with your ETQ system?
So we're not actually doing that yet. We will be doing it this year. And so right now we're working on, you know, really kind of firming up what the requirements are, exactly what are those integration points, what data are we planning on moving, is it bi-directional or one way, you know, those sorts of questions are going to have to all be answered in a requirements document, and we'll work with our internal team to set up the integration.
Some of the master data will be simpler, so there's already areas built into ETQ to maintain like supplier data, customer information, and even material information. So that should be simpler, pretty straightforward. But the one that'll be a little more challenging is when we want to use the non-conformances and pull that information bi-directional and be working in our SAP's quality module, specifically in the inspection planning. So that'll be a little more challenge only because different sites are set up a little bit differently for some of their inspection planning.
Awesome. I have a group of what I believe to be related questions. So Dana wants to know, how did you decide what to implement in what phase? Maybe I can actually pull it up, your kind of roadmap diagram there.
Yeah.
So how did you decide that?
So it was part of the, I'd say the core team with the quality directors, really understanding kind of what works with your business, I guess. But for us, it was really important first to do document control, because that actually, the document control and the, your SOPs, work instructions, manuals, drawing specs, that information is really, really important and touches pretty much every piece of your business, or most pieces of your business. So we felt that was really important to do that piece of it. So then while you're doing that, it's really important for any type of ISO-based quality management system to make sure that those documents and the people who use them are being trained in those documents. So we did those at the same time. And then also we thought our the corrective action module, or CAPA module as they call it, we wanted to get that done right away also, because we had a lot of different sites that were using many different corrective action systems. So for us, that was important to consolidate that, at least as part of that first core group. And ETQ is already structured into, it's kind of like 6 or so core modules. So I would highly recommend you actually do the core modules, and then you can build out from there.
Awesome. I think I have a follow-on with that. How many different modules have you implemented as part of the integrated enterprise-wide QMS?
So, well, we have 6 that core modules, and then we're rolling those out into the various sites and globally. So we're really moving along with those modules, but then we're also working at the same time now, where we're working on the non-conformance. I guess it's an application set. It's not just one, but it's a whole application set of non-conformances. We're working on that. And then later this year, we'll be also rolling out our supplier quality. So that's an important one as well. But that kind of, we've done a little bit of the supplier quality, because when we did our corrective action module, we went ahead and added the supplier corrective action requests, or the SCAR module. We did that at the same time. So that's already, that piece is done. And we'll also be doing the new product introduction application set as well, which has, many of you know, new product introduction has a lot of different, I'd say, far-reaching requirements, depending on the industries that you play in.
Awesome. And I think this is kind of a follow-on question too. Can you describe the approach you took in setting up the hierarchy of locations?
Do you want to take that one, or?
No, I think that, or? Sorry, you're
okay. I didn't know.
Yeah. Stuff. Go ahead.
So, well, with the locations, the way it's structured, and we kept, again, with what I call the out of box, we structured it where it really goes by country, state, city is the hierarchy we used. So regardless, we didn't model it any other way. So while that was the hierarchy that we used, is just, again, is geographic. And then we decided as to, like the first group, we didn't want to do all of one division that was all in one geographic location. We wanted to make sure we had a mix of our, some performance materials and our electronic materials, but we also wanted to have US sites and international sites, so that anything that came up as we were gathering the requirements for that particular module, that we were at least incorporating all of those requirements from the beginning.
That's great. I have a question from David. He says, thank you so much for this great presentation. He has a question about regulations. So in terms of the regulations your system is helping you comply with, he saw ITAR. What other regulations or standards are you having to comply with?
So the one that we've implemented now, the export control, that covers like our ITAR and EAR. Those are the main ones that we're controlling within this system. Now there's all kinds of regulations that may or may not be just managed by ETQ, but it depends what else you need to, what else like we have, FARs and DFARs, things like that. But that's not necessarily just managed within an ETQ or QMS system. That's actually, that's a little different. FARs, DFARs are some of the key ones.
And I think GDPR gets covered kind of by the full ITAR compliance requirement.
Yeah.
Great. Let me take a look at some of these other questions. So Theodore would like to know, are you able to have multiple process owners for a single process?
Well, that's really a business decision. We do not. We feel it's important that a business process has an actual true owner. So you have a business process owner, and that's the person who would then be the owner for those specific documents associated with it. Now you can always have maybe a backup, because there's a delegation that you can do if somebody's on vacation or just not available. But for the most part, a business process has an owner that's making those decisions. You may have other internal suppliers to that process that maybe would be an important element in terms of review and approval of a particular document or process. And you would always want to have them included in as a reviewer or approver for that document. But really, in our business, we only define it as one business process owner.
Great. And I put this up on the screen, but I do want to remind everyone on the webinar today, we have tons of additional resources on our website. You can find them at etq.com/etq-resources. We have case studies, white papers, all kinds of webinar replays. So I definitely recommend checking that out. We do have time for a couple more questions. We have a lot here. We might not get to all of these, so I do want to let you guys know that we will follow up with you afterward if we don't get to your question. We're going to try to fit in as many as we can. So Craig wants to know, are you allowing your customers to access your data regarding specific complaints, restricted access?
So we haven't implemented the complaint module yet, but that is one thing we are considering. We may, it'll be discussed when we're doing the requirements gathering for the customer complaint management. But we currently have a couple customers that can get into the system and access in our old system. So we may continue that. We haven't decided yet, but if we want to, it's definitely possible. And we may also do that in a later phase when we do the supplier management. We may also implement that to allow suppliers to submit their corrective actions directly into the system. So there's a lot of flexibility. We haven't decided exactly all the requirements yet for those, because those are ongoing or future implementations.
That's great. So it's been about 2 years since you first implemented. Do you have any hard dollar gains you can share in terms of the ROI you've seen?
Hard dollar gains.
I don't think so.
Not yet.
At this point, we've definitely Yeah, we've definitely seen efficiencies,
Yeah.
you know, in terms of not, where we might start to see the hard dollar gains is once we are off of the Lotus Notes application fully. So as soon as we get all of our sites up on ETQ and we can roll off of that, that'll be a big savings for us. You know, and otherwise I can't speak to whether or not we've had any, you know, headcount impact. I not that I'm aware of, but you know, again, certainly we've been streamlining processes. So possibly.
Yeah, it's definitely streamlining. You know, audit management will be streamlined. Since we don't have all of our sites up yet on the core modules, we can't actually capture that yet, because once we have all of them up and we're doing our, I'd say the final implementation of the core modules is this year, where all of them can participate in the data roll-ups and being able to get better reporting. There's also another section that I don't think we mentioned called Insights that ETQ offers, and that's kind of, in addition to the standard reporting, it allows you to really enhance your level of reporting structure. And we're just digging into that.
And I think I have one last question that's kind of tangential to that. So why does Materion not complete the entire module across the organization versus kind of that staggering approach?
Well, first of all, when it's a global implementation, just having every site all at once being engaged in one process would be, it'd be a very large task, I'd say. It's a very daunting task to have that many people, plus just trying to figure out, you know, what are your meeting times if you have you're in every time zone practically.
Right.
So you know, there was a method to how we came up with the staggered approach, but I guess depending on your company, there's no reason why you couldn't. That was just a decision we made, the business decision we made that would make the most sense to be able to utilize our resources effectively. Yeah.
There was also a customer component at the very beginning where we had a customer that wanted, you know, specific sites to be up and running pretty quickly. So, you know, that there was a piece of that right at the beginning of the project.
Right, and we had just we're in the process of opening a new facility, a new manufacturing site that had no QMS system. So we thought this would be a really good opportunity to start that new site with ETQ.
Awesome. I think that is all the time we have for questions. Gina, Nora, thank you so much. You guys have a great story, and I especially love the gathering user feedback element that you guys do. So thank you so much for joining us. I do just want to quickly mention you can visit ETQ at the ASQ World Conference on Quality and Improvement in May. We're going to be having a booth. We have a couple of sessions that you can attend as well. So if you are attending the ASQ World Conference, we'd love to see you. Stop by. So I am going to hand it back over to Dirk and Gina, Nora. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys. And also thanks to the audience. There was a lot of great questions. I mean, we had a jillion questions coming in. So some real interest there, and I appreciate that. As Liz said, don't worry if we didn't get to your question. Your question is tagged with your email. All that'll get sent to ETQ, and somebody will be able to get to you offline and be able to address those questions for you. Also, several of you asked about a copy of the presentation. So you'll be getting an email from Quality Digest that will have a link to the recording of this webinar. So if you want to go back and watch the recording again or share that link with your friends, you can do that. And then I believe ETQ will be sending out the slides, a PDF of the slides to the registrants, but that'll be coming from ETQ. So keep your eyes open for both of that, for both of us, from Quality Digest and ETQ. And that is it for now. So once again, thanks to Gina and Nora and Liz for the presentation. Thanks again from Quality Digest. And thanks for you for joining us. And we will see you at the next webinar. So long.